Hello and welcome to Maya with Haste. George here, and we're going to take a look at the extrusion command in this lesson. Now, extrusion is probably one of the most important things for you to know when you're dealing with polygonal modeling. I can't think of a single model I haven't used extrusion on. It can be furniture or dragons or even people or different objects. Almost always I'll be pulling an extrusion out someplace. So let's go ahead and create a simple object in our scene. Let's just make a cube, hit the F key to center up on it. Let's right click and go to vertex mode. Now, depending upon the mode you're in, extrusions will act differently. We can do extrusions on vertices, edges, or faces. You can actually do an extrusion on the entire object itself, although I recommend not doing that, especially when you're new to Maya. Time and time again, people extrude the object forgetting they've extruded it, and what you end up with is a double set of vertices, or literally faces, edges, everything on that object, and it really screws up all of your detail, and it's very difficult to get rid of. You usually have to go through and manually delete everything yourself or try to merge things, and it's just a pain. Don't do it. Let's go ahead and select a particular vertex right here. Now, there's multiple ways for us to make an extrusion command happen. Much like everything in Maya, we can either go to Edit Mesh and click Extrude. We can hit the Control E button if we want to. We can hold down the space key and then go to Edit Mesh and once again click Extrude. Or we can select an object or select a vertex, hold down the Shift and then right mouse button, and right down here you'll see is Extrude Vertex. Let's go ahead and press it there. Immediately when we issue this command, we get this nice little menu over here, telling us, of course, the input name right there, as well as the parameters that we're allowed to modify, such as the width and the length of this object, as well as the number of divisions going along it. So now let's do an extrusion on vertices with multiple ones selected. I'm going to hold down the Shift and right-click key. I'm going to hit Extrude Vertex. And here you can see what's happening is each one gets extruded by itself, separately from the rest. I'm going to hit Control-Z a bit and go back in time. Get our object back to something we had before. Now let's go to edges. Right-click, edge mode, click on a couple edges, more than one at a time. Let's right-click and hold down Shift and go to Extrude Edge. And let's pull an edge out. So here we have our gizmo. And what you're going to notice with extruding edges is the fact that we're actually pulling out an entire new face. Now, because we have multiple ones selected and because they're connected together, we have an interesting parameter now in our menu. Of course, we have our thickness from before, offsets and so forth, and divisions that we can add. But most important is this keep faces together option. This is a Boolean value that can be toggled between on and off. And what that does is it either unites the geometry together or makes each extrusion separate. Now, one thing I haven't really labored on here is the fact that when we're using this Gizmo Transform to manipulate our extrusion, we're actually doing this first and foremost in local space. That's why if I click and pull in this direction, every one of these extrusions is moving in its local space, its Z direction. Now, if I click this little icon in the upper right-hand corner on this gizmo, this switches us to world space, which means if I use this gizmo, they're all going to move together in the same direction in world space. Usually, you're going to want to work in local space unless you're doing some pretty interesting things. So as you can see here, if I'm moving from the left to the right, it's each of these edges left and right directions, or X directions, I should say. All right, so let's go ahead and undo that really quick. Now let's take a look at faces instead. Frame up on our object, right-click, go to face mode, and grab the top face just to start with. Hit Control-E this time, use that shortcut. Now of course, when we do a extrusion on a face, we get an entire new face with that original face being connected back to the original geometry with a series of additional faces. This is a great way to create more detail out of an object by pulling up more faces from it, or lengthening an object. Of course, we have our thickness, our offsets, our divisions as well. And then, once again, we have that keep faces together option. Now, keep faces together is going to matter most when we're dealing with multiple selections. Let's do something a little bit more interesting. Let's delete that object, throw down a sphere real quick, right-click, go to face mode, and grab every single face on that object. Now, let's go ahead and hit Control-E again, and let's make keep faces together on for the moment. Now, this is weird. Our object's gone black. That's not usually good. That means our objects might be inside out, or its normals might be messed up. But anyway, let's just start pulling. There it is. But it looks like we're just scaling that object, and all of a sudden it disappears. Remember, what you're doing is keeping all those faces together and extruding outwards from that original information, okay? So we're actually kind of creating thickness to this object. There's now an interior and an exterior with this object. Now, this is far easier to notice if we turn keep faces together off. And now you can see each one of these faces are separated, and we're actually pulling out this detail. And once again, it's very important that you're either working in local coordinates, which provides this sort of interesting effect where all these objects are being pulled out together individually, or world space. So if I'm in world space now and I start doing this, all these points move together. Now, of course, you could do some interesting stuff in world space, such as using the scale tool uniformly. And what you'll notice is not only does it get larger, but each of those faces scales larger together. Or if we scale them down, we now have all these interesting little prickly points, making a very spiky ball. So that's it for incredibly simple extrusions. Mind you, you can extrude along curves and do some more interesting things with them, but for the most part, this is all you need to be able to start making different objects. It's very simple for you to pop down a cube and then just start applying extrusions to get some interesting detail. So what I'm going to do really quick is just show you some examples of how I could use the extrusion key really quick to make some interesting complex shapes. We can select multiple sides, right-click extrude faces, of course, and then just use the scale tool to scale that information in, hit the G key to pull it out, and already we're creating our own little robot-looking thing. You know, these could be arms if you wanted to. You can imagine them being arms that we're pulling out, and or maybe handles for a bicycle. Maybe that's what this is. I don't know, and it's not important. All that you need to see here is that extrusions are very powerful and allow you to rapidly create very interesting looking geometry in almost no time. Highly recommend you spend 5 to 10 minutes just starting to extrude things. By the way, while I'm doing this, you'll notice I'm not hitting extrude over and over again. I'm actually using the G key. This allows me to repeat the last command I just performed. So if I hit the G key now, I'm doing another extrusion out from there, hit it again, and if you use your transformation gizmos in a very intelligent way, you can just keep hitting G, 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 and just manipulating those transforms to create some pretty amazing looking objects. Already this could be some sort of a, I don't know, very basic primitive looking spacecraft or spaceship, or maybe a docking location for something. Really depends on what you can think of in your imagination. So if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe. Also, please go into the comments section below and give me information on what you do or don't enjoy, or if you have any ideas for future videos you would like to cover inside of Maya. Thanks. Bye.